is a dictator. Trump is a fascist. And he's the one dictating our thoughts. I say no. Maduro, sí.
Trump, no!
Maduro, sí.
Trump, no! No to intervention! Peace for Venezuela! No to intervention! Peace for Venezuela! No to intervention! Peace for Venezuela!
The American government has no right to tell people in Venezuela who their leadership will be. Only Venezuela will determine its own destiny. The American people say no to that imperialism.
You have leaders of countries like the United States saying, yes, it doesn't matter who the Venezuelan people elected. It matters what Donald Trump and others want in Venezuela. And so they went ahead and said, we recognize this unelected head of the National Assembly as the president of Venezuela. It's an absolute coup. It's totally unacceptable. We've seen what coups have done in Latin America over the years. We've seen what happened when the U.S. and others accepted the coup in Venezuela and the tremendous violence that has resulted from that and the wave of migrants that have come to our country. And we don't want another coup in Venezuela.
Maduro, sí.
Yankee, no!
Maduro, sí.
Yankee, no!
Maduro, sí.
Yankee, no! Hands off Venezuela!
Hands off Venezuela!
Hands off Venezuela!
Maduro, sí.
Trump, no!
Maduro, sí.
Trump, no!
Maduro, sí.
Trump, no!
Maduro, sí.
Yankee, no!
Maduro, sí.
Yankee, no!
Maduro, sí.
Yankee, no!
Addressing the issue of the closure of the federal government, we don't want to use our money for intervention in Venezuela. Invest the money here! Invest the money here! Put those federal workers back to work and put those unemployed people back to work.
Yes.
You know, talk about the infrastructure in this country. Invest in the U.S. Forget about Venezuela. Let them go with their democracy. We need to open up the federal government here. No intervention. We want peace. Peace to invest in the U.S. for the working class.
Jobs, not war! Jobs, not war! Jobs, not war! Jobs, not war! Yankee, escucha, estamos en la lucha!
How can the United States claim to care about democracy when, as a matter of habit and duty, it spreads nothing but death and pestilence and destruction all over this earth? No, there will never be any democracy coming from the U.S. as long as this vicious, racist, white supremacist capitalist system is in place.
Some reporter was just interviewing me and said, well, you know, the human rights organizations, most of which are a fraud, by the way, are asserting that Nicolás Maduro doesn't care about human rights, and how can we, as people who care about human rights, be here defending Nicolás Maduro? Well, the answer is quite simple. Donald Trump is not trying to overthrow Nicolás Maduro because he has a soft spot in his heart for human rights. Donald Trump is the enemy of human rights. If he wants to overthrow the government in Venezuela, there must be another reason. Well, what is that reason? The reason... Oil. Oil is one. The other reason is that Venezuela, if it becomes free, if it becomes independent, if it becomes socialist, it sets an example for the hundreds of millions of unemployed people throughout Latin America who also want to be free.
We've got to be fighting every day to say, hands off Venezuela!
Hands off Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela!
Hands off Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela!
Hands off Venezuela! Hands off Venezuela!
Venezuelan people want socialism. They want to control their own country. The press is ignoring the realities of what's happening in Venezuela. They're ignoring the reality of how Juan Guaido, his party, was essentially set up by USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy. The same institutions that financed the coup against Aristide in 2004. The same institutions that are right now working to destabilize Nicaragua.
Maduro, sí! Trump, no! Maduro, sí! Trump, no! Maduro, sí! Trump no.
Maduro sí.
Trump no.
¡Viva Venezuela!